COVID-19 recovery, helping Hoosiers recover financially, physically, mentally, and socially through services provided by Community Action of Greater Indianapolis. Services include energy assistance, child care, family support, education, training programs, transitional housing, and food assistance. COVID-19 recovery.
Hello, everyone. Kelly Vaughn here for COVID-19 recovery, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Al Bracken. Hello, good morning.
You're pretty much taking over the show now that you are the official host, Al. Just want you to know that.
Thanks for letting me know. I didn't know that.
Hey, welcome, and we want to welcome you all to COVID-19 recovery. Man, do we have a very, I'd call this one a deep one, Al. We're going to talk about domestic violence, which, as you know, increased dramatically during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we want to talk about, since we are in many ways recovering from the pandemic, recovering from this issue and increase in domestic violence. And of course, we'd like to wipe it out entirely. Joining us to talk about that and her story is Mira Cassidy, and she is a writer. She is a motivational speaker, and she's also a travel advisor. Welcome to the show, Mira.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Al. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome. So now, I guess start by telling us your story, because you were a victim of domestic violence, right?
Absolutely. This is a relationship that I was in for over 18 years. So I was pretty young when it started. As a teenager, this is an individual that, he was pretty much all I ever really knew as far as relationship wise. Now, one thing I will say, getting into this as far as it being teen domestic violence that continued and went into my adulthood, definitely, having a boyfriend that young at 15 was definitely against mom and dad's rules. But this was something that I chose to do, anyway. And it was not a good situation. I mean, looking back, on it, I can definitely see so many things that was wrong, even at that point in my life. And unfortunately, this is a relationship that, we definitely have 3 beautiful children, but I ended up marrying this individual, and the abuse continued, throughout the marriage until I had the courage to walk away.
Wow. You say you felt you did some things wrong. What do you mean by that? And what did you feel like you did wrong?
You know what? Good question. Just because of the fact that I went against mom and dad's rules, so that was a really big part of why it was so hard for me to start telling on his behavior when we were married, because I felt like, well, as a youth, I had sinned. Coming up in, a Christian household and going against mom and dad's rules and doing things that I knew was not, what I was raised to do, or biblically, what I was raised to do, or biblically, appropriate, we'll say it that way. So because of a lot of that guilt, I took that with me into the marriage and just took a lot of the abuse, the physical abuse, because I felt like I deserved it. So, and I felt like, oh, you are reaping what you sow. And when I say I didn't really report it within the process or the procedure, I was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So besides for, of course, telling the police, right, because I'm not the police, but it took me a while to get the courage to talk about his behavior to the leaders, because I felt so guilty for the sins of my youth. So that made it very, very hard for me to speak about it. But when I finally did, the abuse had got so bad that I didn't have a choice but to say something to try to get help. But unfortunately, when I did that, it was more, I was told basically to be more of a submissive wife. There wasn't any accountability done for him. It was mainly looked at me being more of a submissive wife. And that was the start of me feeling like I'm not being believed here. But I held so much guilt because of the sins of my youth. And what happened was, sadly, I ended up walking away from that faith because it just wasn't a safe place for me not to be believed over so many years of reporting the same behavior. So I had to make the decision to walk away to be safe. And it was hard, but it's something that I had to do.
Myra, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, because we absolutely know it's not an easy thing to do. Mm-hmm. And as part of, I'm sure that part of this is part of your healing, and it probably will continue for the rest of your life. And what we really appreciate is you sharing your story for other people to heal and grow from it and maybe recognize their own situations. Okay. And as part of what CAGI is doing in our Mind, Body, Soul initiative and wellness, is we're getting past just COVID, and we're talking about community wellness and wellness of the spirit as well. One of the questions that I have is that you first met this person at 15. Was he also a witness, and was it within the confines of the church that you met him, or was he outside of your religion? And how did that go?
Good question, because that makes a difference. And honestly, that's felt like he was a safe person because we were both raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. But the difference was, and let me say this disclosure, Al, it's never my intention to talk bad about Jehovah's Witnesses. I always say that. I'm just saying what happened to me. Sadly, this is my story. But we were both raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. The difference was I was baptized. I got baptized at the age of 12. He didn't get baptized until he was an adult. And, shortly before we got married, but we were both raised as Jehovah's Witnesses. So his mother is like a pioneer, which basically means she's devotes 70 hours a month to Bible education. So people would call her like a pillar of the truth. Like she's this firm woman, single mother who raised her children in that faith. And me, I was also, raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. My dad being an elder, still an elder. My mom was a pioneer before she had us. So we both came from very spiritual families. So because of the fact that I was baptized at 12 and he wasn't, when we got involved as teenagers, I ended up getting disfellowshipped at 17 years of age when I was pregnant. So I was actually put out of that faith for 3 years, 5 months, and 1 day. And I also think that's a big part of what made him who he is today, because he didn't go through those 3 years, 5 months, and 1 day with me. It was a different experience. I took the brunt of the discipline and he did not. So I think that kind of conditioned him that this is all Myra's fault, and also did not help him to hold or learn to be accountable for his behavior.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 22. I had two little ones out of wedlock. So there you go again with the guilt that, I held for so long, because I knew that these things were not what mom and dad instilled in me. So I held so much guilt going into this marriage and wanted it to work. I felt like, you know what? We did all this stuff as teenagers and young and children. Now that we're adults, 22 and 24, we're going to have a great marriage and we're going to bounce back. We're going to show everybody that we're going to bounce back. That was kind of my thought process. And 3 months into our marriage, I was hit with a reality check, though he promised me before we got married that he would never put his hands on me. This is in the past. We're starting over fresh. And 3 months into our marriage, he took a dish of Tupperware food and threw it at my head. And after that, it was pretty much on. So one thing I will say is, let me just put this in here, at 19 years of age, it was very, very obvious that something was wrong, because he literally kicked in my door and attacked me while my daughter was home. She was 1. She was with me at that time.
This is before you were married, right?
This is before we were married, right? And that's how I first got introduced to domestic women's counseling services, which I definitely, when you're a victim of violence, you need the help, you need the education. But how to take you through the steps of after we were married, it was so frequent and so intense. The first 2 years of my marriage were absolutely horrible. So we're talking about, and one thing about it is, remember, I'm not going to the Kingdom Hall with a black eye and a bloody nose. I'm getting choked. I'm getting pushed so hard into a wall that there's a hole. He's picking me up and throwing me down. He's biting me. Those are the types of behaviors that he's doing. And when it came down to it, and I finally began to let individuals know what was happening, I think because the intention is that you're not black and blue. I wasn't really being believed, especially when I say the most prevalent act that he was doing for me was choking me, which asphyxiation is so dangerous in itself. but that was more of what would happen. And then too, it did not help within the Faith of Jehovah's Witnesses in the year of 2008. One of their latest study books was published. And then I got married in 2005. And in that book, it states that a woman cannot separate, or a victim should not separate or divorce unless it's extreme physical abuse. Okay. So that also created some issues because I could not understand what this terminology meant. I knew I didn't agree with it, but I'm saying that you choking me, you pushing me, you throwing me down, you biting me is extreme physical abuse.
And when we come back, we'll talk more about what you went through as a victim.
Because I didn't put you in the hospital.
Of domestic violence.
Okay.
Okay, we'll be back right after this.
During the COVID-19 emergency, community action agencies are open and here to ensure the well-being of families across the country. For over 50 years, we've been delivering life-changing services, solutions, and stability.
Contact your local community action agency serving Boone, Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties for help during the COVID-19 emergency. We can assist with masks, hand sanitizers, food, shelter, transportation, and more. Apply today.
And we're back here on COVID-19 Recovery with Al Bracken and myself, Kelly Vaughn. We're talking to Mira Cassidy about her being a victim of domestic violence victimized by her husband, her ex-husband. And Mira, the reason I was asking you what your reaction would be, did you ever fight back?
Interestingly enough, for the most part, no, not until I actually confided in another sister within the congregation and told her what was going on, and that was her advice to fight back. So after that point, I tried to, but there's really no fighting back when you're fighting against a man's strength. You know, you try to defend yourself. Well, how do you do it? But trying to, yeah. I mean, after that, and I know that's probably, but that's what, you know, I was encouraged to do. And that's what makes sense. But until that point, I didn't think about it because I'm thinking, I don't want to hurt him. I know I'm being hurt. I don't know what to do. This is foreign to me. But after that, I tried to defend myself, but it wasn't like I was, you can't really defend yourself against a man's strength. I couldn't.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And the only reason I asked that, you're absolutely right. And Al knows this, I do know, you know, sometimes we're taught that way not to even try. And I think a lot of times women are victimized, and I'm not blaming the victim, I'm just saying, but we need to learn to fight or carry yourself in such a way, and I'm not saying you, I'm just saying a lot of, any woman, that kind of, I wish you would touch me. Sometimes it's attitude, or I will get somebody, I wish you would put your hands on me. And a lot of times we have this attitude of that we won't stand a chance, or we will get hurt. And it may not stop somebody, but it's kind of like, you know, you die trying. And I'm not saying you, I'm just kind of putting it out there in terms of how sometimes women react to the idea of even being attacked. We don't even try. And it's a big case in Yosemite Park where a woman fought to the death. They were murdered, but she fought to the death, but they were able to solve the case because she fought so hard. And a lot of times women, we're programmed not to even try. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that I think just socially some of that has to change in terms of how we think about defending ourselves. But that's another show. Yeah.
No, I agree. Definitely. Even I've taken self-defense classes, right, post the divorce. And I was having such a hard time in the class being successful because you think, don't fight. It's not Christian to fight. And the instructor had to say, what are you talking about? David was a warrior. What are you talking about? Kick. So I had to learn to kind of change my mindset in case, because I am a single woman, you know.
Okay.
So what, if, you know, based on your experiences, what are some of the signs that we should look for our sisters, our mothers, our neighbors that have this kind of abuse going on, but they don't really communicate it to anyone? What should we be looking for?
I would say when a new person comes into their life, look for any changes. I think a lot of times we know, and I can say that because my oldest brother sadly was also a victim of violence, but there were certain things that I can look back at now and say, I knew something wasn't right. He wasn't himself. So I would say definitely pay attention to those signs that are being told to us. And definitely if there's things like all of a sudden now this person can't be around us, right? They're trying to single this individual out, okay? If there seems to be any kind of controlling behavior taking place, definitely if you see any physical signs, question and figure out what's kind of going on and what's happening. And then also too, because there's so many different forms of abuse, is there anything going on as far as financial abuse? Something seems to be happening financially here with the expenses. Why are we constantly giving our funds away and things of that nature as well? But definitely controlling behavior, I would say, would be definitely a red sign. And then if you see any changes in that person's behavior, because a lot of times because of the intimidation, they're not going to outright tell you it's embarrassing, you're my family member, I don't want you to think this way. So as advocates for these individuals, sometimes we have to pay attention and see if we notice a difference in their behavior and ask why.
Right. I think
Why?
too, a lot of times people will lie, or as you said, they're trying to win you over. So they're going to, like you said, they're going to hide all that, or they'll lie and they know who they are, but because they want to occupy your space. And I think that women, or men for that matter, need to do your background work. And of course, when you're 17 and 22, there's not a lot of background, but especially, of course, this can happen at any age. When it's somebody older, try to, watch somebody's spending habits, especially if we're talking about getting married. What's that person's credit score? Look it up. You can go on the Marion County website. There's a public website that shows whether they have any prior offenses. So I think a lot of times we don't do our homework, and we just think because that person looks nice or they're nice, and they're going to be okay. And there's a lot more to that person. And talk to other people. I think talking to other people, because there's another girl somewhere, or a guy for that matter, that'll tell you exactly what they're like. But you got to be able to go out and do your homework. We're just about, not almost out of time. We got about 6 minutes left, but I know you have a solution, at least one way of helping women heal. Can you share with us your approach on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, as a survivor, I feel like what's helped me definitely is my writing, because I'm a writer, but also travel and wellness and being around community. That's so important, because for me to break free, completely free, I also had to let go of a community that I love to rebuild. So what I've done is I am planning September of 2022, Mira's Luxurious Women's Empowerment Retreat for survivors of domestic violence and supporters. It's for all women, but specifically survivors, to give resources and tools to help build that self-confidence, that self-esteem. It's going to be a one-day event here in Indianapolis. I'm looking to book the Alexander and confirm that date, but I've got to do some background work in the meantime with getting sponsors and things like that. So if anyone wants to donate, I definitely appreciate that as well. But this is going to be a one-day event that's going to be to help build that confidence and talk about this issue, where I'm going to share my story. I've got some other speakers sharing their stories, including a police woman who was a victim of violence herself. So definitely I'm looking forward to this event. And one thing I want to mention too, Kelly, if I may, one thing about it, why I'm calling it Mira's Luxurious Women's Empowerment Retreat, my travel business is Luxurious Getaways by Mira, but also it's about what I know happened to me, my self-esteem, how low it was, how bad I, felt. And I always want to make sure that I'm repairing that part of myself and bringing along people with me. Because my self-esteem was just ripped apart. So I'm always about trying to create meaningful experiences that make us feel good and make us feel well. That's really, really important.
Based on that, what are you doing personally day to day that helps with that journey. And we also are going to make sure we put your contact information up. You give us your contact. So tell us a little bit about what you do every day for your self-esteem. You know, what is sustaining you now? Because you left that particular denomination. Did you go? I mean, just tell us a little bit about what is sustaining you every day.
Absolutely. I won't forget giving my contact information out too, but
Okay.
So real quick on that, 317-620-1592, 317-620-1592. My email is just luxury@myracassidy.com. Now, what I'm doing to sustain myself, Al, it's hard, right? This is all I knew all my life. If I needed a plumber, I would call one of Jehovah's Witnesses. If I needed, a carpenter, this is all that was my life. And my children, I still encourage them to practice that faith. So I have my good days and my bad days because I do feel hurt. I do feel hurt. But what I do is I actually have my own book that I created. It's called Bounce Back from Tragedy. It's a journal. And in my mind, I think we always know the answers. So I created this book. It's available on Amazon, my third book. And I actually take myself through the process. Each day I have a quote that I look at. I have an affirmation. And I think about anything that's toxic in my life that I can cleanse out. So I definitely do that. I believe in actually just giving myself a mental break. Definitely, I do my own little mama retreat where I just get away for a weekend. Even if it's in this city, just get away. But also I have my own little piece of time that I give myself, just time to sit and be quiet, just to be quiet. Because as a mom too, you're ripping and you're running and so much is coming at you and so many things happen. I need time just to be quiet and to repair myself. So those are things. Definitely prayer. Prayer is a big part of my life as well. Writing, I write too. So, as a writer, that's always very, very therapeutic. But definitely writing and trying to build my business also helps, really building my business, because that keeps me busy and that keeps me not thinking about the hurt that I haven't seen my grandma in 2 years, or the hurt that I don't have a relationship with my mom and my dad. So those things help.
Wow. Okay. Well, wow. I mean, you have a phenomenal testimony.
Yeah.
And I love your way of helping people to heal. You kind of remind me of I can't think of his name. That's terrible. But he was a talk show host. You seem like you got a little talk show host in you.
Montel.
How did you say?
Kelly, yeah. Come on, let's manifest that. You know what? Actually, I studied telecommunications in middle school and high school. And I was voted most likely to have a job in broadcasting and journalism, but I fell for the wrong guy. So that took me away from that path. Right. But yeah, definitely. Let's manifest that. I would love that one day.
Yeah, well, what man and Satan meant for bad, God meant for good. So maybe, because that's weird, he would say, Montel Williams, exactly what I know
exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, it was like, I could just see it. Like, this is a Montel story here. So we hope that for you, and we hope you much success with the travel and the getaway for those survivors. I think that's going to be awesome. We have the information on the screen, but we appreciate you coming on. Myra Cassidy, thanks so much for joining us here on COVID-19 Recovery. And thank you all for joining us. I'm Kelly Vaughn.
And I'm Al Bracken. Thank you, Myra.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
During the COVID-19 emergency, community action agencies are open and here to ensure the well-being of families across the country. For over 50 years, we've been delivering life-changing services, solutions, and stability.
Serving Boone, Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties, be sure to visit our website to learn about employment and education opportunities, food, housing, transportation assistance, and more. Apply today by calling 317-396-1800.
Bye, Janet. It's nice seeing you again. You look good, girl. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Well, to help me, she'd have to help every day. every hour, every ouch, every time my wife calls for help. I mean, maybe she could help me make her lunch, but the crust, all the crust has to be cut off the corners. She could help me run to the doctor for the 5th time this week. Help me with the specialist and the second opinions and the painful paperwork about paperwork. Help me deal with how hard it is seeing my wife's name on so much paperwork. But this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this, like this, for her. Besides,
Take care.
we will. Janet doesn't like her cooking anyway.
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
$150/90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Lowering them could save you from having a stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
Now I'm, trying to get better, stronger than ever.
During the COVID-19 emergency, community action agencies are open and here to ensure the well-being of families across the country. For over 50 years, we've been delivering life-changing services, solutions, and stability.
Contact your local community action agency serving Boone, Hamilton, Hendricks, and Marion counties for help during the COVID-19 emergency. We can assist with masks, hand sanitizers, food, shelter, transportation, and more. Apply today.